Hans Moleman is his name, aka Ralph Mellish. He's a stone cold player, hard as if was mad jealous when he dated Selma first, cause he's only 31. Drinking ruined his life, it's such a sad story, son. He's got a knife in his cane and a fire in his loins. He's the indie movie star who took a football to the groin. Burns thought he was a leprechaun and drilled him in the head. He slept with Lars Ulrich's grandmother, then chilled with her in bed. He's more metal than Metallica, though that's not very hard. Homer drove him off a cliff, he's so impatient in his car. He was hauling Poe's house, just another day for Hans. But he's back on his feet, cause he's the mother flippin' man. You know there's no escape from the fortress of the moles. He's been burned from over buried, but he's still on a roll. He's been radiated, detonated, heartbroken twice. He's the Lazarus of Springfield, always coming back to life. His name is Moleman, Hans Moleman. You can't keep Hans Moleman down. He's the bad luck Brian of 902 Oak Grove. Hipster glasses so thick and round. He's Moleman, Hans Moleman. You can't keep Hans Moleman down, cause he's trying out for Poochie while he's waiting on his kidney. He's the talk of the whole damn town. You can already see our recording. I'll start, right? You ready? You got the lyrics?
Yeah. But in another sense, no. Yeah.
Moleman.
Of a century of Moleman. That's a bad start, isn't it?
Should we start again? Because you're adding extra words, like all for the beginning of the sentence. You know, I'm not against, I'm all for creative expression. Moleman.
A century of Moleman.
Moleman.
31 flavours of Moleman.
Milkman.
Agony every day.
Hans Moleman.
This is Moleman in the morning. Good Moleman to you.
Moleman.
Oh no! Oh my groin! Oh no, my brain!
Hans Moleman.
Kissing a peanut.
Milkman.
Everyone's happy for Moleman.
Hans a lot Moleman.
Buying songs and stealing hearts.
Great start to our fifth cast. Bon nuit.
Yes.
And Guten Tag. We are the antiquarians, Lawrence M. Nightingale, and my partner here, Lawrence, and me, Flimsy Rosewater. We are lickers of dusty tomes located in the bowels of the disused stadium of Springfield Park, down the tunnels to the town hall of Lee, employed to put local Simpsons files into spotty archive, to haphazardly document the lives of Springfield's backwaters. Thanks to our cousins over at the MFIMDB for promoting show. Oh, look, there's a spider in the dust.
Oh yeah, how unusual. What does it want? Commander, am I just supposed to read this?
You can read a bit and I'll read a little bit. Let's start again. Oh, look, over there, a spider in the dust.
Commander Darren Spider and Baroness Berry, the Vale of Catchmoss.
Oh, yes, our cat, Baroness Berry the Vale. The spider, I believe, is dressed as a little forest dweller, like a Norman soldier. He's got a little spider helmet on and a shield. Looks a little bit like a Roman as well.
Oh, yeah. And there's a mouse as well in a mouse hole.
Oh, yeah, over there.
How weird.
Very strange. So what's going on in today's episode?
Third cast in a row. We are looking at our most prominent character, probably our most liked character as well, in Hans Moleman, if that is his real name.
A.K.A. Ralph Mellish.
Yes.
Moment has been retconned in a way that gives me hope and gives us hope for Maude Flanders.
Well, yes, I have thoughts about that later because there's the possibility that it's not a retcon. If anything, it gives me less hope for Maude.
Please explain, or do you want to come to that later?
We'll come to it later.
Okay, so let's start with cast connections. So far our casters are Poochie, Disco Stew, Lunch Lady Dora / Doris, and Betbis. They've all connected in certain ways. Did you see any connections between those characters and today's? Hans Moleman.
Yes, I did. I noted he is wearing glasses for a start. So we are still in the tradition of any male character we look at seems to be wearing glasses. He also dated Doris from the Lunch Lady Doris cast. They were the only two connections I could think of that were visual. And the other one I wrote down was that he is the anti-Maude in that he survives everything and she'd survived. She didn't even survive her first rodeo.
She did not even this. She claimed, "This is my first rodeo," and she was brutally murdered by it. I thought the death connection was there, not only with Maude, but also with Poochie, possibly Lunch Lady Doris, but not Database and Stu.
Moleman is essentially an affront to the continuity of The Simpsons in several ways. It's not just the death. His skin colour changes, and sort of more frequently than, like, Smithers and Judge Snyder sort of were yellow, and then they changed them. Oh, no, sorry. Smithers was brown, and they changed him to yellow, and they did the opposite with Snyder. Moleman just sort of flips between the two. Like, not brown, but sort of like an olive-coloured skin. And then just regular Simpson colours.
That's deliberate. The thing is that we'll come to it later as well, but Groening stood up and said this character should never appear again. And similar to Database, basically the writers and artists seem to have just increased the amount of time that Moleman spent on screen until eventually Groening was won over, as we all were.
When did he say this?
According to Al Jean, the internal rule set by the show's creator Matt Groening that background characters shouldn't look more unusual than main characters. Moleman stuck out like a withered thumb, contrived and a little weird, and it didn't look like a typical Simpsons human. At the colour screening, Matt Groening stood up and said, "This should never appear on the show again," Al Jean recalls, so naturally the writers decided to keep bringing him back. These days, Jean says, Groening loves him as much as anybody.
Yes. Nice.
Moleman as the background character is like, you can't ignore him when he's there. He's just so weird in his appearance and his actions.
Yeah, very shriveled and raisin-like.
So that brings us on to the next section. I don't know. I just like him. So why do you just like Hans Moleman?
I have noted that Moleman is one of the sweeter or kinder members of Springfield, I think. Or more innocent, and I think his voice plays into that a lot. I think his voice is really good. It's Dan Castellaneta.
That's correct.
Doing Moleman. And it reminds me of Mr. Magoo, or what's the sad blue dog called?
You're thinking of Droopy, he's got the big jowls and all. He's white. He's a little like chubby white dog. So
and like Eeyore.
Yeah, he apparently, I don't know if that's who said this, but he is based on Droopy a little bit.
You get that with the voice very.
Yeah,
but I think that generates a lot of pity for Moleman from the audience.
Yeah.
He's one of the more pitied characters. He's up there with sort of Milhouse, for probably worse so, for just being like the town loser who gets abused.
Well, Gil struck me as someone who has similar bad fortune but reacts in a very different way. And Gil's like this kind of panicky, jittery person that, like, nobody really feels actual sorry for him. It's kind of like, we don't wish harm on Gil, but we like, you know, bad stuff's going to keep happening, usually from your own choice. But Moleman is kind of like, and again, one of the writers talks about this, I'll bring it up in a bit, but essentially the universe just conspires against Moleman every single time he appears.
It seems that way. He's very much played. If he's on screen, it's likely he's going to either be hurt or insulted or say something sad about himself.
Well, I put down that I don't know. I just like him. There's too much about Moleman. There's almost nothing about Moleman that I dislike. He's got to be in my top few characters, given that he doesn't do anything. He just embodies the Moleman existence. He's very cute and harmless, and he just never gets a break. Although the clip about the mayor stuff is interesting. I'd never seen that before. So when we get to that, that's a really interesting spin on the Moleman prophecy.
I would argue that he's one of the nicest people in town. He's up there because, again, like, you got Ned. You got the Reverend. The people who are supposed to be the nicest people in town often have complete mental breaks. Like, Ned snapped at everybody, like, you know, for storyline purposes, and Reverend Lovejoy isn't very good anyway. So I'd say Moleman's probably nicer than the two of them, and I can't really think of anybody else who really comes close to being genuinely nice and sort of like just getting on with his own life and not really troubling anybody.
Does he actually do nice stuff, though?
No, but he doesn't necessarily do bad stuff, which we tend to see, especially even in just like a running joke. Like after a certain amount of time, again, like because Ned's so nice, it's funny or it's a good story to have him do something not so nice. Whereas Moleman's never got a story. There's a couple of things though. I do think that he's lying about being 31 to get pity.
Well, let's go there next then. I'm 31 years old. Drinking has ruined my life. So the Moleman is apparently an elderly man who has claimed he's only 31 years old, and his driver's license says he was born in August the 2nd, 1921, not the 8th of February. So,
oh yeah,
due to North American dating systems, our goal of doing this week and celebrating a century of Moleman is as misadvised as Moleman's entire life. So, in a way, very appropriate.
Wonderful.
He apparently is only 31, but at the same AA meeting where Ned told us about his Ann Landers story with Magdalene, the Moleman claimed that his appearance was due to his heavy drinking, although I see no evidence in anything else he does of being a drinker.
No, I've never seen him anywhere drinking anything. Not even non-alcoholic beverages.
We've seen him do very, very little except for stand and wait for disaster
Injury.
to befall. He's also apparently claimed that he's 88 and can't swim. The license that does say he was born on the 2nd of August 1961, which would have made him 31 years old when the episode was aired. There's another version of his license saying he was born in 1921, which would have made him nearly 70 at that point. And he was apparently the mayor of Springfield 30 years before Simpsons era, which would imply that he's well into his 50s or 60s. At other times, he's implied that he's 70 as well. So, Moleman, is he inconsistent? Is he lying, or is some weird phenomenon going on?
Well, I have two theories about Moleman. One of them is, he's just an affront to continuity. Whereas they try and keep most things linear. Maybe they just thought it would be funny to change Moleman's story all the time. Like, there's an actor, isn't there? I can't remember who it is, but doesn't he tell like a different story? Every time he gets asked like a boring question about like how did you get your start, he just makes up a different exciting story. I can't remember who it is or the context of it, but that's a thing. And I feel like Moleman, there's something in one of the clips, in the second clip, that makes me think he's somewhat self-aware about his injuries being either funny or looked at or like sort of witnessed. So he obviously wants a response from people. So maybe he's saying he's 31 for pity. He does clearly he plays on like the things he says are like they make you want to pity him.
Certainly doesn't go out of his way to help himself, and he certainly plays up every aspect of his personality and appearance that makes people pity him. But he doesn't receive much of that pity, so it's not that successful.
No, nobody cares about him.
Nobody is caring for Moleman. So we talked last time about Database being maybe a D-lister. Moleman is arguably our highest lister so far, but where would you put him?
Yeah, Moleman is I'd say the most appeared and the most popular character we've looked at so far, but I'd still put him in the C list because the B list to me is people who sort of had an episode about them, but they've still in like 30 plus years, the last two clips we're going to look at, which are from the same episode, that's sort of the most we get to know about his story. So he is very Moleman's appearances are very fleeting. We still don't know. He's not had the sort of Doris scene where she sat down and talked to Lisa, where you kind of got to know her a little bit more. And yeah, there's not really been anything with Moleman. Every time you see him, if anything, it's more confusing. We have less of a grasp of who he is.
He is an enigma, and that's both in universe and out of universe. In universe, his story keeps changing, and he appears to be, just like Kenny, able to come back from the dead, which shouldn't happen in the relatively realistic world of Springfield. Certainly not without explanation, as it does with a Moleman.
Precisely. I did see the thing about him being Kenny, which I hadn't really made that connection before.
Yeah, I don't know when they started killing him off, though, because it didn't happen early on, I don't think.
Season 4, I think, was the first time.
Really? The Edgar Allan Poe House is season 4. But seeing as they've done it like maybe 30 times since then, when did the actual avalanche of deaths begin?
Well, look, again, it's just sort of steady over time. According to the Wikipedia, there's 40. And obviously I made the compilation for you.
I think you should stick that on the end of this video and also release it independently.
Yeah.
Have you got all of them on there?
No, there is I didn't bother including Treehouse of Horrors because
I want to get to
but
that.
I will put them on if I'm going to make a proper video. But then there's one. The most recent one is apparently he drowns on a boat, or a boat drowns him or something, and I couldn't. File wouldn't open and work properly, so I couldn't. So the rest of them, yeah, they're all, but they're not. There isn't necessary, because I thought when I was looking at it, I thought this is interesting. It seems to happen a lot more early on, and then it dwindles, which is the opposite of what you'd think with something like this. No, it sort of stayed steady. I think like a bit later on, there's a season like 24 or 25 where it happens 3 times within like 8 episodes, and that's the closest. And 2 of them are getting run over. But
the driving thing is huge. So him driving things and him being run over, cars play a big part in the Moleman story. Obviously, because of the very easy joke of him not being able to see very well. Let's jump into some trivia before we get into the clips themselves. So Hans Moleman, aka potentially Ralph Mellish, you say that might not be retconned. He's a mole-like man. That's why they gave him the name, and that's why out of universe they changed his name. He is a Christian, a Protestant, frequently seen at church. He carries a cane that has a hidden sword inside it. He's the earliest character we've come across in that he appears in the Tracy Ullman shorts in some version. Here's the thing that we said about Droopy and Mr. Magoo. Those characters invariably triumphed against the odds, whereas Moleman is invariably crushed by them. And also, there's the Fantastic Four villain, Moleman, who looks very, very similar to Hans Moleman in many ways and lives underground with a group of mole people.
is that before or after The Simpsons? Which one took inspiration from the other?
Oh, Moleman's from the 60s, the Fantastic Four villain. Yeah, he was well known to the Simpsons people.
Nice, good trivia. I have nothing really to add to the trivia other than it's interesting that the glasses, the nerdier a character is, the more sort of distinct the glasses are. Like Milhouse, Hans, maybe not nerdy, but sort of hapless. Database has got the big red glasses, and Frink's glasses are really thick as well. But then sort of the cool characters like Disco Stew, Duffman, etc. have like really thin glasses.
Yeah. It's a standard comedy trope, isn't it? The thick glasses. It's
easy.
Ricky Gervais mocks it in his in that sitcom he does in Extras, which is based where?
Wigan.
It is indeed based now, a hometown of Wigan. I've got masses of trivia, to be honest, that could fill several hours because I just fell into a Moleman mole hole. Apparently his dad still lives at the Springfield retirement castle, and he did a wheelbarrow race with him at some point, which suggests that maybe Moleman is younger than he looks. He has an iron lung that he goes inside to help with his breathing. He has cataracts, which means he can't see very well, and he's used medical marijuana. He stole Peter Griffin's car in the Simpsons crossover Family Guy. There's an unused script in which Moleman is an action hero in the mold of James Bond and has a twin brother named Etienne.
Etienne
Moleman. Now, the reason they gave him hands apparently is because Moleman, when they decided they looked like a mole, they realized that Moleman was sounded German, so they gave him a German first name.
I wondered if it had anything to do. The only other Hans I can think of is Gruber, but I think Moleman made his debut before Gruber.
And I don't know if they would make that connection directly. But apparently the original name, Ralph Mellish, is a Monty Python reference.
I didn't know that.
Monty Python's. I didn't know any of this stuff until I went down that hole. Now, I'm only going to talk about a couple of things before we get into content. One thing is the jobs he's had. He has been mostly a driver, even though he's repeatedly had his driving license revoked for not being able to see properly, usually by, is it Patty and Selma? Do they both work at the driving place?
Selma seems to have a bit more interaction with him for some reason.
So he was also the mayor of Springfield, and he worked in a bird sanctuary. He was a postal worker, a janitor at the nuclear power plant. He was a radio host with Moleman in the morning. He is leader of a mole people and has an underground fortress complete with earthquake machines, which we shall get to later. Another nose thumbing at the continuity and reality of The Simpsons. He has worked in a prison as a prison librarian. He has been an indie movie director. Again, we will get to that. Probably his most famous, possibly, appearance. He has been a Duff delivery man. He also teaches orange eating classes at the Adult Learning Center in Springfield and has attended Springfield University, but only so he had somewhere to sit. And he's been a hot dog vendor. His life story was was published as a book. Are you familiar with this?
No, I did not know this.
I was not. The book is called Magnificent Bastard: The Lives and Loves of Hans Moleman, and on the front he's driving a 70s style chopper, Easy Rider style, with a young lady behind him.
I'm assuming that's in show. That's not available for me to buy.
Unfortunately, that is not available for any of us to buy unless a listener out there would like to write Magnificent Bastard, the lives and loves of Hans Moleman. Now, I went down a little bit of a tangent with the Magnificent Bastard line because it's a trope. I've heard it in Seinfeld. I also heard a version of it in Community when Jeff is playing pool and he says, he beats the teacher at pool and they're having an argument over what he can wear, and the coach says, from now on you can play pool however you want, and Jeff says, I choose shorts, and the coach kisses him and says, you magnificent son of a bitch. Now I didn't know.
Sure he says it as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Magnificent Bastard pops up a lot. It was in The Critic, it's in 30 Rock, it's in a bunch of stuff. You know this trope? Have you seen it? Have you heard it?
No, but it just has it sounds good.
It does. It's got a good punch. So apparently it comes from George C. Scott in the movie Patton. George C. Scott is magnificent. Never seen the movie Patton, but one of my favorite films is They Might Be Giants, in which he plays an ex-lawyer who loses his mind and thinks he's Sherlock Holmes, and he just goes around seeing clues everywhere that Moriarty is out there in books, on bookcases and in railway timetables. A brilliant movie. Tangent over.
This is a week 2 Nathan with some bonus trivia. The episode with Moleman and the movie that he makes, the man getting hit by football, that episode ends with the film winning an Oscar, and the actor that has replaced Moleman in the movie is George C. Scott, which I found very surreal.
Without any more further ados, clip 0. Mr. Burns is in a theatre. He stands up and says, are you saying boo or Burns? And people began to pelt Burns with all kinds of stuff very angrily. And we pan to Moleman, who says, I was saying boo Burns, feebly.
Yeah, I just left this in because it was around the same time as the football in the groin, so I spotted it and it made me laugh, so I thought it would be a good entrance to the video, but weird and sad.
I have to say, these clips, most of the clips I like that we watch for the show are fun or funny, but these genuinely, most of them made me laugh.
Yeah, this is the funniest
even that
one.
I've seen that 10, 20 times. I was saying boo Earns. It's one of his most famous lines, but still, it made me laugh.
I agree.
Real clip 1, debut of Hans Moleman back in the Tracy Ullman show. The Simpsons kids are all in the movie theater. Bart's persuaded them to go and watch a film called Revenge of the Space Mutants. Moleman seems to be the only other person in the theater. He's kind of far back. I can't tell if he has glasses on. He seems very concerned over the kids being worried about this movie. And I just wondered, he's a sci-fi fan. He's, for some reason, watching this movie without his glasses on. What's going on?
I sort of thought he had his glasses on, but maybe I saw it wrong. I think they're just less thick. This makes Hans the first cast, because this debuted in February 1989 or something. So Hans is the first cast character who is actually older than me in the real world.
Interesting.
So that's fun. He predates me. Apparently it's him, Krusty, and Grandpa are the 3 characters that premiered before The Simpsons in the shorts. So that's weird. Krusty and Grandpa, yeah, B-list characters, but for Moleman to be the 3rd is very unusual. And I guess at that point they just needed to throw some, again, don't know why there's only one person there, but they needed to throw someone in the background for whatever reason. And they just obviously designed a little old man who went on to steal the world's heart.
Kindly Old Man is apparently what he's referred to, and I'm guessing that it was just much easier to animate a theatre full of empty seats, and it wasn't an in-universe reason for Moleman being there, because he doesn't interact with him in any way.
No, and at this point, it wasn't even a TV show at this point, so there was no long-term goals. So it wasn't, let's introduce this. I imagine when they came to bring in Moleman back into it, because again, my Moleman research or knowledge is much, much more limited. So I don't know if Moleman appears in the early seasons in the background, but it feels like they just thought, right, we have this kind of funny design, we'll just bring this back, rather than them planning any sort of long-term Moleman goals in that 20-second short.
They probably didn't put a lot of thought into it, and I think, yeah, they just needed a kindly old gentleman in the background, and it was only when he came back in like season 4, and may not have even been the same character, because there's some sketches of just a kindly gentleman, and I think someone just adapted it, and they just obviously ran with it. Instead of just taking him and producing someone similar to this guy, they turned up all the weirdness, which is where it became controversial, and then ironically led to him actually getting more screen time.
It seems like he looks really concerned for the kids, which again, plays into the kindly old man setup. I've also written that he looks somewhat like a Koopa Trooper from Mario in this clip. Very like turtle-like. There's something about his sort of head looks very turtley. But yeah, no, this one was the most interesting for me to find out about, because I didn't know. This was sort of a secret about Moleman that I didn't know, that he made this sort of very special, blocky shorts appearance.
Yeah.
This is also the furthest back we've ever gone in the cast, in the Maude Cast or the cast.
We're down into season -1 or season 0, whichever one you're counting. Maude wasn't even a twinkle in the designer's eye at this point.
Maude wasn't even a concept. There were no Flanders, and at this point, I imagine they didn't even consider the fact that the Simpsons had neighbours.
I imagine so.
But the last thing I'll say about this is I am a fan of very early designs, because they're sort of very rough. So I do like the early Simpsons, and they've done it once again, playing on nostalgia. They've done it once or twice where they've brought that design back in newer episodes and had them sort of stood next to each other. And it is kind of crazy how different they look without them having changed dramatically in like one swoop. Like Homer sort of gradually over the first 2 seasons becomes Homer. But then when you look at it, you never really see the change coming. Yeah, that's pretty much it for clip 1. It was short and sweet like Moleman.
I think, unlike comics were at least post-60s, the artists themselves would put a little bit of a spin on the character. Because it's a TV show, the characters haven't really changed, but there's been a slight evolution, especially when you see new on, the newer episode of The Simpsons. Surely the animation is better, but it's lost a bit of its charm, with the lines getting a little bit thinner and they're a little bit more detail. There's something charming about those very early ones, and then the classic kind of season 4 to 15 or whatever.
Yeah. I do like the newer sort of some stuff they can do, and again, you get to see a lot more characters these days because it's much easier to throw. Like all of Springfield, this is why the Maude Cast works, because she's gone by season 11 really, because if she was we couldn't do like a Helen cast, because after a certain point when they go HD, everybody in the background is a character. So 9 times out of 10, these people are in almost every episode, just kind of stood. Maude would have loved it, just being part of the mob. But yeah, the old ones definitely have a lot more charm and personality to them. They feel more anarchistic rather than mainstream.
Here's the interesting thing. Those early designs on Tracy Ullman don't look that much like the cartoons that Groening was making at the time. So he had that cartoon strip Life in Hell that has that bunny in it, right? Which looks more like a classic season 5 or 6 Simpsons character, yet it took like several years for them to look like the drawings he was already doing before The Simpsons started.
Yeah, the animals, the bunny, I can't remember what it's called. It's called Life in Hell, the comic, isn't it?
Yeah,
but I don't know what the bunny's called.
I think the bunny's called Blinky, maybe.
Oh, yes.
Or is that fish, though, isn't it? Maybe I'm getting mixed up.
I think maybe Binky. I think you're right, though. It's something similar to that. Yeah, he looks very itchy and scratchy. I believe that he just designed the initial designs. He kind of sketched up really quick, like within like 15 minutes before the meeting. But again, I don't know. At this point, I imagine he was responsible for designing Moleman, because it must have been a very small team on the Tracy Ullman shorts. So I imagine he had a lot more creative input, maybe.
Possibly. Yeah, I imagine there's only a few of them at that point. Clip two. We're in the theatre back to where we were before. Now, this is arguably Moleman's biggest, most famous appearance. The big screen comes on. It says Hans Moleman Productions presents Man Getting Hit by Football. Hans is stood in his garden and he is hit quickly in the groin by a pointy American football style football. He falls to the ground in agony. Hand to the audience. Homer Simpson loves it, and nobody else does. Most people seem angered by either Homer's reaction or the movie itself.
I imagine it was Homer's reaction because it's so obnoxious, but again, one of the better moments. I think, yeah, this maybe is what solidified Hans, because he'd made a couple of, we've seen the funny sort of stuff leading up to this, but I think there's probably sort of a defining moment for characters like Hans and Disco Stew and Chalmers, where there was an episode that sort of solidified them and then they started appearing way more frequently after said episode. And I would say that this is probably Moleman's episode. I conjured up a brief secret dream storyline to connect the first two clips as well. Moleman had a secret, after watching this Space Mutants movie, Moleman had a secret desire, or his secret dream was to make his own movie. And then the Springfield Film Festival rolled around, so he had the chance to fulfill his dream, and that's why he put a movie in there. Either that or I was going to say he wants to win $10,000, but that isn't the prize. Homer just shouts, "Give that man the $10,000," and Madge says, "This isn't America's funniest home videos." So I don't know what the prize is.
I'm interested in Moleman's movie.
Like the production and stuff.
Who's filming it and who threw the football into his groin? Did he set up an elaborate one-man operation with some kind of, those machines that pelt tennis balls out at you, and also maybe he set his timer on his video camera, or has he got other people working with him?
Well, I think that probably option one, because at this point Moleman's making Database and Maude look like the most kind of social, surrounded by friends sort of characters. In comparison to Moleman, Maude's sort of fine and she isn't. How our cousins always talk about her being like a isolated character. In comparison to Moleman is consistently, I can't think of a friend that he has or a relative that he sees frequently.
There's a clip later that I want to show where one of his death clips where there is a family stood next to his bed. Maybe we'll come to that in a little while.
The point I made about it is, does he know that he's a comic foil in this situation, and is he sort of self-aware that when he gets hurt, people respond to it? Because it seems like he's put this movie in to make people laugh, or either that or to express. Maybe it was like a serious, this is how my life goes.
The thing is, he's not done it in an arty way. It's not black and white looking to show like the pain of existence, nor is it comedic. He plays it totally deadpan. So either Moleman is really going for that kind of, you take what you want from this movie. He's gone postmodernist, as our cousins over there with Jacques the Pen Derrida would be interested in. Or he's not really thought it through very much, and he's like, I want to make a movie. I don't have a lot of time. I know what will get me attention. I know what's good. But surely he knows that being hit in the ground by football is a standard comedic trope.
Yeah, so it seems like he's playing it for laughs, which again, this is what really intrigues me. That makes it seem like he is aware that people find his injuries funny. So does he have some involvement in his own injuries, or is he somewhat seeking them out rather than them happening? But a lot of them are completely random occurrences.
There's like a meta commentary on his life and his constant attacks by the universe. It could just be that when he was sitting down to brainstorm ideas, that the fact that he just gets injured all the time just meant that's where he kept going back to. So it was like, when you write something and make something, it's only later you realize, that's why I did that, because I saw this here, I did this here. Maybe it was only later that he realized, it's because I keep getting hit and run over and set on fire.
Perhaps. I've noted that Homer's relationship with Moleman is very interesting, because it's either, again, similar to Maude, maybe it's either he's either violently in love with him or like passionately fond of him, like he finds him really funny, or when he just thinks that he's bad and he his favourite thing to do is just kiss the top of his head. And he treats him with way more affection than he's ever treated Bart. And we see a couple of things like that with Moleman. Either that or he either kills or hurts him.
But he doesn't do that on purpose, so it's almost like he doesn't know Moleman exists, and when he does, he never actually knows that Moleman exists. The kids obviously know who Moleman is. He's not a hidden figure. The kids both know who he is, as they talk about in an upcoming clip.
Homer's a character who, again, they've always said the funniest thing is that his emotions are so flippable. His violent interactions with Hans don't ever seem intentional or malicious, but it is funny that he either completely loves him or he's doing something to hurt him. There isn't really a middle ground.
No, he doesn't just talk. He doesn't meet him in the street and have a conversation, but to be honest, they might not show that on screen. Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe he meets the Moleman every couple of days when they're buying a paper together and he says, "Hey, Hans," and he goes, "How are you doing, Homer?" We don't get to see that side. We don't get to see that rich off-camera life of
We do not.
Hans, middle name Moleman. Clip 3. Give me a minute.
Yes.
You're editing this one, right?
Yeah.
Leave it all in. This is all gold. Audio verite. Clip
I'll
3,
see how it...
season 11. Hello, Gutter. Homer and Otto are plunging from a building. Looks like they're on a bungee cord, though why they would be doing it from the top of a building over a main street, I don't know. They go
Can
down.
I pause you there?
You can indeed.
I just want to give you, this is a very small rant / context for this. I've just written the premise is ridiculous. Homer, I can't really remember why, but it's something to do with him bowling a perfect game and everybody giving him attention and then the attention going away. But he decides to kill himself by going to the top of this building. And then he has doubts, but there's a line of people who also want to kill themselves. So the man behind him just pushes him and he falls and coincides with Otto, who is bungee jumping. But this clip makes it look like a Homer Otto kind of story. But Otto's just bungee jumping next to him. Yeah, that's what's going on. And in comparison, there's one in like the Wonderful Life episode in like season 1 where Homer goes to that bridge with a rock and thinks about killing himself, and it's played very like seriously and emotionally. It's like a sad scene. Whereas this, we're only on season 11. Like Maude's still alive in this episode. We'll come back to this episode. So the fact that we're already this far off the rails. But again, with Moleman is proving that continuity can't be taken too seriously with this program. So,
but unlike, say, Family Guy, who just went mad with this kind of stuff later, this is almost like a cutaway, and it's absolutely ridiculous, even given that ridiculous premise of, once again, Homer dying or almost dying, and by this point it just doesn't matter, it's just played for laughs. And ridiculously, so they go through this manhole, and sure, that joke's funny. They go past some Morlocks from the H.G. Wells story, The Time Machine. They're also in the Marvel comics, the Morlocks. They live underground, but they look different in the Marvel one. Then they go past the Chuds, which are from a movie in the 80s, cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers. And then to the third level, they get down to the Mole Men, and you have King Hans down there with his crown on. He has an earthquake machine, which looks like a really nice contraption. He's playing with it, and he says, "There is no escape from the fortress of the moles." And then, of course, they bungee back up, and he says, except for that one. Yeah, what in God's name is going on? Are these people just playing along with Moleman? He's just under the ground. It's like, and they're all having a big cosplay party. Because that's more bizarre and unbelievable than anything else, really, in The Simpsons, surely.
Well, we're leading up to, like you just said, so this is season 11, which was, I think it's 2000. Family Guy's currently had the 3 seasons and gone off the air and is becoming popular because of the DVD sales. So I think we're sort of leading into, by season 14, 15, you're in full Family Guy territory. Like Homer has a dream about smothering Grandpa to death and stuff. Like you get into full sort of Family Guy. So I think this is leading into that, because there's another episode in season 11 where they buy a horse, like a race horse. And it's all very normal. Then Homer gets kidnapped by the jockeys and taken to this underground, like Smurf furry kingdom where all the jockeys live, and they're like elves. And if he doesn't lose the race, they're going to eat his brain. And that's around the same. people said at that point, like even some of the writers said, like this isn't okay, and then
Well,
it just became the norm.
It's shark jumping, isn't it? And it can go with it, and that's why I like Rick and Morty right from the start. They were we're gonna do everything ridiculous in episode 1, so the shark cannot be jumped. And
Yeah.
of course, then they got accused of going the other way of becoming boring, right? Because everything's so ridiculous. It's like, where are you going from that? But I like the idea. I love the idea of Mole Man being down there. I think it would have been more funny had the moles not been real and he would have just been down there with a bunch of fake molemen that he'd made himself and a clearly homemade earthquake machine, and like everything was really crappy and homemade. And I think that would have been far more humorous for me to believe that Mole Man essentially had a fetish for going underground and pretending he was the leader of the Mole Men.
My theory, or a loose theory that I have that I'm not committed to, is that this is real. This explains the change of skin colour, the variety of ages, and all the deaths, in that there is just a race of mole men living underground that one dies and the other comes up, and they just sort of go through a sequence of mole people. So that's one thing. The thing that doesn't play into that is that none of the other people in this kingdom of the moles look like Mole Man. They're like, 2 of them are like pink, 2 of them are blue. They sort of look like characters from the new Matt Groening thing. They're that Disenchantment. They just sort of look like generic, like goblin-y creatures. So that sort of doesn't lend to that idea. But yeah, Mole Man's wearing a crown, so that implies that if it is real, he is the king of these people, which means he's been both the mayor and the king for somebody who's very quiet and innocent and seems like he's led a sheltered life. Is the earthquake machine a reference to something? The significance of him having that is completely lost on me, because there are no earthquakes in the episode.
I don't think the Mole Man in the Fantastic Four has an earthquake machine, but he has this kind of drill thing. Like he has this car, like with a drill on the front, and he'll come out of like the earth with like a mole. He's ridiculous. To be honest, the Mole Man character is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I know it's comic books and all, but he is one of the most ridiculous ones. Usually, like those ridiculous characters, especially in Marvel, they're hanging around the C&D list. And he's
Squirrel Girl.
Squirrel Girl. She that was cool. That series a few years ago. There's a dude called Frogman Stilt Man. Those are like minor Spider-Man ones that come back. Spider-Ham. He got popular after the Spider-Verse. But there's these ridiculous Marvel ones.
There is an argument that Spider-Ham could have been influenced by our very own Spider-Pig.
No, Spider-Ham's like the original Spider-Ham character was around when I was a kid. He's not new.
Oh, then perhaps our Spider-Pig was influenced by Spider-Ham. There's influence somewhere in this story.
There's influence somewhere for sure. I can't find any evidence of the Mole Man having maybe here the tremor trigger. But this is from 2020, so maybe this predates it. Look, Mole Man the Mole Man from Marvel Comics does have something called a tremor trigger.
From that picture you just showed me, he kind of looks like a very small John Goodman.
A very good John Smallman.
Yes, Maude Goodman. Speaking of Maude, this is the most threatening we've ever heard Mole Man sound when he's in his comfort zone. And that reminded me of Maude in a way. It's like, is Mole Man sweet and innocent, or is this his true self? And is he hiding it in a way similar to how Maude, on the surface seems really sweet and kind, but when you dig a little deeper, she's not. Is that happening with Mole Man too? Because he's basically threatening their life. He doesn't do anything to keep them there, but he is making a threat against them. And that's the most powerful we've ever seen him acting at this point.
That's true.
So is there an aspect to it of him? Is he conning the entire town and he has some kind of secret mole plan? But yeah, the idea that there is a race of mole men has stuck with me as a way of explaining all the mad continuity things with him, in that it's just a different mole man that we're seeing every time. I'm surprised I haven't seen that theory more widespread. It seems quite, There's an episode later on, a future episode, where there's like 8 clones of Ralph and they all keep getting killed. And every time one gets killed, another Ralph turns up. So it sort of reminded me of that as well.
That's a Treehouse of Horror one with Ralph, though, surely.
No, it's a future. Again, we're in the future, though, so the rules are sort of fast and loose.
I think they missed a bunch of tricks there with that underground moleman thing. Though, to be honest, with it being one very short clip, I'm not that surprised that that theory has not gained popularity online until now. Clip 4,
Exactly.
future drama, possibly, along with the football, Moleman's most famous appearance.
I will say that this beat out like 4 or 5 clips that would have taught us something about Moleman just because it's my favourite Moleman clip.
Very funny. So Bart and Lisa are fighting in the street. Moleman is behind them, quietly sat on a bench waiting for a buzz. Bart says to Lisa, "You love Moleman." Lisa pushes back. "No, you love Moleman. You're gay for Moleman." And Bart then fires back that Lisa is gay for Moleman, and they start fighting with each other. Of course, Lisa, if she is a heterosexual female, would be straight for Moleman, but let's not get into that. Cut to Moleman sad with his on the bench with his cane across his lap, saying the famous line, which is,
"No one's gay for Moleman."
"No one's gay for Moleman," he says sadly.
Yeah, ridiculous early 2000s comedy. It's very good kid, like accurate of what these two kids would say, because again, they just know that it's an insult at this point. So Bart's saying it to Lisa, he doesn't understand why that doesn't particularly work. But that's what makes it funnier. The sad thing about this is that Moleman is known between Bart and Lisa as sort of how kids sort of have, maybe there's a weird adult that walks around the village or something, and like the crazy cat lady character. It's sad that Moleman's sort of this person that, like, you don't want to be associated with him. So I hope that doesn't happen with all the kids. I hope he isn't just a figure of mockery for all the kids in town, because that would be even sadder. And also, it's sad that Moleman will never know that in the real world, people of all sexualities and genders are gay for Moleman.
You don't have to be gay for Moleman, and I think that's what we've learned from the 21st century. It strikes me as maybe a bit of a Boo Radley character in this scene, but we don't get much of that anymore. Sadly, we don't get any more interactions with anybody either, but we don't get any more mocking and disparaging of the Moleman as just an other to be laughed at.
Yes. He also, I've written that he seems sad that no one is gay for him, which he has been seen dating Selma and Doris, so this implies that Moleman may be either bi or pansexual. But again, there's something about Moleman's character that seeks attention, so maybe he's just sad that nobody likes him.
Yeah, I think the jury's still out on Moleman's sexuality other than we know. He definitely likes the ladies, but he's an open-minded chap, so let's wait and see what season 50 throws up. Clip 5. Now I'd like to welcome our beloved 4-time mayor, Hans Moleman. Now this puzzled me. I had no context for it. And when the dude first came up and he flips onto the stage, and starts talking, I'm like, what is this? Then I realized that young guy is Moleman. He looks nothing like the current man's Moleman. And then I started putting things together. So the guy introducing him, I guess, is the old Jewish guy when he's not old. And then I started noticing, oh, there's young Ned Flanders with his mum and dad. There's young Willie and a younger Burns with Smithers as dad, and Disco Stew and his father, I think, in the background. Possibly
yeah, well,
Dr. Hibbert?
There's a couple of things when I kind of ripped apart that list of surnames. Chalmers, Agnes, and Skinner are sat together, but why would Chalmers be sat with them?
Chalmers. I thought it was Skinner's dad.
No, I'm pretty sure it's Chalmers, and also we're going with this sort of like lame continuity. Skinner isn't Skinner, but I think that we can let that slide. It seems like I thought it was Disco Stew's father and uncle, and then when I looked at it again, I thought, well, maybe the smaller one is just a young Disco Stew.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. The small and younger Disco Stew, and the older one that you just see a little bit is Dad. Disco Dad.
It is a treat, though, that we are still getting information about our other casts from the new casts. I didn't know Disco Stew had a dad that we'd seen, and now, thanks to Moleman, we have that information.
Yeah. But Disco Stew was raised in a non-disco house, so this just makes the story even more complicated, because when Stew was, if this is Stew, when he was like 6 or 7, disco was all the rage, but by the time he hit disco-loving age, it was no longer a done deal.
But also his father really looks like he's into disco from the way he's just dressed exactly like an adult Disco Stew.
He does indeed.
So, also, last thing that isn't about Moleman is why is groundskeeper Willie's father there when we know full well that there's like 6 or 7 versions. Like Willie's been born in Glasgow and Edinburgh. He's been born in North Kilchtown. He came to America on a boat. We've suggested that he transferred from Edinburgh with Maude. So there is for whatever reason, all I know is that Groundskeeper Willie's father shouldn't be in this scene. And if I know that, the people being paid to produce this show for millions, not just 4,000 additional dollars, millions of dollars.
Literally billions of dollars. I have to be honest, I didn't see Willie's father in that scene.
He's in there and it's stupid. This is the last negative thing, but I really don't like the design of young Moleman. I think he looks very Italian, which is out of character. I just don't like it. I think it just looks I don't know, there's a lot of other things you could have done with it, and this is he just looks really sleazy and creepy.
Yeah, it seems like they didn't really keep any of the characteristics about old Hans that would have been good to extrapolate backwards.
Yeah, the joke being that he's very like sprightly and full of life and optimistic, and the hilarity of that life took that away from him over time.
Yes, I'm not with them on that one. But so young, non-raisin-like Hans backflips onto the stage and he announces he has written a song, and he asks, what is the one thing that our town has lacked? Younger Burns says a human zoo. He corrects him by saying it's a town song, and he says, you're in luck, I've written one. Only Springfield.
Context being that this clip continues and they sing the song, and it's just like a generic town song, and it sort of phases through it shows the audience over like 4 stages of time singing that song. Again, I have issues with that, but Manjula's in that audience as a teenager. We're not even trying at this point. Yeah, you see them get older. So the next clip we're going to look at is just the same scene, but maybe like 2 or 3 minutes later, when they've realised that Hans actually purchased the song from somebody who sold it to about half of the towns in America. So they aren't as special as Hans had made them think, which again implies that he stole this town anthem and optimistically barefaced lied to the entire town as the mayor. So again, we're in the territory that he might not be as sweet and innocent as we're thinking. But it's not in terms of him versus Quimby, this is like a non-crime.
No, and what it reminded me of is a Lost kind of thing where it's an obvious, we're going to take this character and we're going to do the opposite of what you think this character would do. So is it like Charlie, who's that sweet kind of like guy, and then they made him into like a drug addict who would do anything. And so it's like the hidden secret idea, but the hidden secret is so, I won't say lazy, but kind of like, what's the most obvious hidden secret this person might have? Oh, he was actually a vibrant and somewhat, kind of sleazy character in the past.
I'd sort of argue as well that they wrote the scene first, or they wrote the idea of the episode, because I don't really know what happens. I can't remember. I've probably seen this once before, but I don't remember it at all. But they obviously wanted this. We need somebody to have written this town song and lied to the town, so we need a flashback. Who should have been Mayor? Moleman. So I think they just fit whichever character it was to the idea that this person was going to lie to the town. And then I don't think it was who can we pick who's a liar. I think it was who would it be funny to see as the mayor. It would be funny to see Hans because he's such a sad, old, sort of miserable character now. It would be funny to see him as a popular, successful character.
The only way I'd let them get away with it is if they work backwards from which character would look funny tied up and blindfolded on a horse. Can we move on to what you call clip 6, but is really the second part of this part? Walking big and tall, Moleman is in the town hall now, and the sash says former mayor, and it's these days, now times. The mob descending on Moleman. You got Apu, Ned, Dredrick, Tatum, Krusty, and he says, I didn't write it, I bought it from a salesman who was selling it to half the towns in America. I never thought any of you would find out because I never thought any of us would go anywhere. Which I thought was quite amusing. Fits in with that small town mentality that the Bushes were talking about in much earlier, because this is season 26 now, right? But the Bushes arrived and they're talking about Springfield having the lowest voting rate ever, and essentially, Moleman, he probably had a good chance that nobody in Springfield would ever go anywhere and find this out. How did they find out in the end?
I can't remember, but I have this exact note that Moleman has the same opinion as Bush. He doesn't believe anybody has any particular hopes or dreams, including himself, because he doesn't say I didn't think that none of you would get out. He includes himself in the sentiment. It's not like he's looking down on people. He just has a generally bad outlook. Even at the time when he was acting all optimistic and positive, clearly he didn't think anybody in the town, including myself, was going to amount to anything in their lives. So that's quite sad. I don't know how they found out about the song, but I think it was just something easy. Lisa probably just went on the internet.
Probably just watched a video and it popped up with someone singing it,
Yeah.
or a person just visited from another town. Here's what happened next. So Willie rips open his shirt and he's got the town song tattooed on his chest, and he says, "What do I do with this? Now I can't be buried in a Jewish cemetery," which puzzled me because I'm not knowledgeable on those facts. So I looked up, and according to Leviticus 19:28, you shall not etch a tattoo on yourselves. Though according to JCOM, it is dependent on the cemetery as to whether they will bury you. So Willie still has a chance. He just might not be able to get into the cemetery he wants.
I don't think he's Jewish. I think he's just upset that he won't be able to have that opportunity.
There's nothing to suggest that Willie's Jewish
that we know of.
that we've seen.
Speaking of it, this is Groundskeeper Willie's third cast appearance in a row. Doris, Database, and now Moleman Willie has had at least one line that I've left in because it's funny.
I think we just need to at some point acknowledge that the Willie cast needs to happen, even though the pickings will be too much. Even a single Moleman cast. Now, the other casts we've done so far, we were like, oh, ha, 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 the Database cast 2 and 3, which could happen, but is unlikely. But Hans Moleman cast 2 is almost inevitable.
We could easily, again, look at how much content the Maude cast is providing. Moleman is in way more episodes than Maude.
Maybe it's something we should put on the back burner. Once the Maude cast is done and dusted, our cousins might decide to go in for another character, but I don't know. You got to really love the Moleman. Those guys love Maude to their very core.
True. He's quick to confess that he's done something wrong, which is nice, which implies that he does have some sort of care. And I do like, one of the things I thought was funny for some reason is that he's wearing a sash that says former mayor that we never see before or again. I enjoyed that because it's just, that's the kind, if you're going to do it, go over the top and be just in your face rude with the stupidity of it.
Because obviously we've just seen the clip, so we know he was the mayor. So it's not there for a cheap way to get us to follow the story, unless of course they hadn't introduced him as Moleman, but they did. They clearly introduced him as Hans Moleman. So So Moleman says, "Please be merciful," and of course they're not. And we cut to Moleman bound up, and this made me laugh, blindfolded and sat backwards on a horse. Mo slaps the horse and the horse runs away, and everyone is annoyed that we've got lunch lady Doris there, we've got Carl, we've got the Van Houtens, and Moleman, and as they go off into the distance, he shouts, I balanced the budget 8 times. So at least he was fiscally responsible.
It seems like he was a good, efficient mayor for the most part, especially compared to Quimby. He was also well received. So something happened that maybe he just faded into the background and people kind of just lost. Once he wasn't the mayor anymore, they lost the respect for him over time. He went from being well received to being sort of one of the most isolated people in town. Even the crazy cat lady has 8 or 9 cats. Moleman seems to have nobody. I wrote that he might be Springfield's punching bag, similar to Gil. Yeah, like he's the person that Springfield seems to take their issues out on. He seems to suffer more than even characters like Mo, who claim to be in, like the worst position in town. Like, Moleman would probably easily trade lives with Mo, given the opportunity.
So, well, here's the thing, right? This is the point where I can drop in the philosophy of Moleman stuff that I got. So, a lot of this comes from an article that talks about talking to Tim Long, who's one of the writers. I don't know that guy, but basically it talks about the pathos of Moleman, the fable, lonely old geezer puttering along from one misfortune to the next. And Tim Long said, I like to use Hans Moleman to illustrate that even the most wonderful events have a downside. For example, if Springfield got a beautiful new shopping mall, Moleman would be trampled by the crowd on the opening day. He's a symbol of crushing anomie and the loneliness of modern existence, but also man's indomitable will to confront these horrors. Straight out of Samuel Beckett, a man who can't get out of bed in the morning, but at the same time recognizes his own crushing isolation. Moleman is a tabula rasa, a comedic blank check for any situation, and yet Yet despite that mutability, he's somehow eternal. The character who nobody wanted keeps on shuffling back. And then this is Al Jean. He's been blessedly free of any change or growth, learning or knowledge. He's the same lovable loser stuck in a line. He's so inconsequential that he's become an indestructible vessel for throwaway jokes and absurd gags. When Groening saw him, his first comment was, he should never appear again. It's pretty hard to ruin a character after that. When characters that well established in the world and have relationships with other characters die, it's a show-altering event, such as Maude. But they can't be run off the road by Otto's school bus and blown to smithereens just for a quick gag, but Moleman can. You're not going to have Principal Skinner or Flanders driving that car, says Jean, but Moleman's not a problem.
Moleman is in fact and indeed not a problem. Yeah, all of that makes a lot of sense. I think that it is what we're doing as well. It's taking something that was probably less mindful and giving sort of meaning to it. Like, I imagine a lot of decisions or things we're talking about happen like subconsciously. Like, I think it'll just be a case of, oh, wouldn't it be funny now if a car crashed and set on fire? Let's have it be Moleman. Like, I don't think you can add the meaning and the thought afterwards, but I think a lot of times, especially now, it's an easy gag and it does work. Like, all of the, no matter what season those Moleman deaths were from, all of them made me laugh.
They called him a button character. Basically, the button is like when you're doing a scene as an actor, you end the scene with a bit of a flourish or some kind of transition. And Moleman does that. He invariably pops up towards the end of a scene just to tie it up in a ridiculous and funny way. Let's move on to the deaths then, because you put together that clip and it is splendid.
Thank you.
I'm going to share my screen. Why don't we read the deaths?
I did write most of the deaths. I wrote a way that he could have survived.
Oh my goodness. I read the way he died and you tell me how he could have survived, okay?
Deal.
Number 1, driven off cliff by Homer while hauling Edgar Allan Poe's exploding house.
Yes, he could have jumped from the car and rolled down the hill.
Fantastic. Murdered by fossil fuels goon.
It's just a hit. He could have been fine.
Torched by sunbeam.
He could have removed his shirt.
Executed by electric chair.
Something could have happened to free him before. We didn't see him get electrocuted.
Buried alive.
That man could have just let him out. He stood there.
Gets drilled in the brain by Mr. Burns. That's my favourite death.
Yes, I have just written, he's either, if he doesn't die, he's at least heavily incapacitated.
Suffocated by river guard balloon. That's where his face you can see his face sucking in the balloon thing.
We don't know how that balloon works. It could have freed him.
Trapped inside morgue while still alive.
Mortician could have had a change of heart.
Sucked into quicksand.
I missed that one, but yeah, that's not something you can escape, is it?
Bear Grylls gets out of quicksand regularly.
Oh, there you go then. He watched a lot of Bear Grylls.
Falls to his death after getting thrown out of window.
That's one of my favourites. He could have just survived the fall.
Eaten alive by wolves.
He could have shot the flare gun at the wolves and scared them away.
Died of a sudden heart attack.
He survived the heart attack.
Run over by Homer's car.
For all the ones where he gets run over, he could have just... There's only one where it looks like he definitely dies.
Crushed by a large peak of concrete.
I watched this closely, and there is the chance that he was behind where the concrete landed.
Suffocated by airbag.
Yeah, he's not getting out of that one.
Gets sucked up by robot vacuum bots.
For that one, I've just written, the fact that this isn't Halloween or some kind of special makes me angry, so it doesn't count.
I agree. Drowns to death after driving his truck into the ocean.
In this one, you see Homer swim past and not help him, but there's time for him to escape.
Crushed by a piece of exploding whale.
Somebody could have been around to help him. It probably wasn't that heavy.
Crushed by a lad's donut.
That's a credit sequence, so doesn't count as... It's like a couch gag.
Dies when life support gets unplugged.
Unless he's faking it, then yeah, he dies here.
Crushed by Sideshow Bob's block of concrete.
He definitely also dies there.
Impaled by sword.
If he's still alive with that sword in him, getting pushed over shouldn't change things.
Dies of kidney failure.
He just says that he's late for his dialysis and passes out. Maybe he survived.
It's funny. It's ridiculous how some of these are absolutely unbelievable and others are very mundane.
Yeah.
Crushed by folding bed. Also one of my favourites.
Yes, that's another good one. Yeah, if he doesn't die, all of his bones are crushed and his organs are crushed. So,
but by a mattress, I don't know. Seems like he might get away with that.
It does bend him in half, though. Like, it bends his entire body in half.
I guess so. Drowns to death after Maggie destroys his surfboard.
I think that's a trace of horror.
Okay. Now, in Trace Horror, he's killed by a robot, killed by Homer's touch of death, eaten alive by alligators, run over by a car after being turned into a zombie, gets hacked in half by Beelzebart, gets crushed by a dinosaur's foot, and crushed by a piece of delivery vehicle. One that doesn't seem to have popped up is one where he's being sent into the cremation thing. Is that the morgue one?
Yeah. There's also the one where Kent Brockman's self-driving car hits him.
Yeah, I skipped over some of the car ones. There's about 3 other things where cars had hit him. So
here's a bit of Statman Spider. He's been killed by Homer 6 times, Kent Brockman once, Burns twice, Roombas, Wolves, Sideshow Bob, Wiggum and the police via the whale explosion, a gravedigger, a mortician, 3 relatives, a nuclear power plant worker, a seminar leader, Lad, Luann, Marge and Manjula, and Mo's brother and sister.
Nice, but never Maude.
No.
So what's you're allowed to 2 favorite deaths?
2 favourites. The best ones are the ones where something happens to him that has no business happening to him. So I like the first one where the goes off the road and the car sets on fire for no reason. And I think the other one is probably the airbag.
That's quite a mundane one. My favorite one is the Burns one, where Burns is high on ether and thinks he's the Lucky Charms leprechaun, and then decides to go to his skull with a power drill. None of that makes any sense whatsoever. He's also dressed as a child at that point by the looks of it.
Once again, he's that's from the bowling episode, Team Homer.
Okay, it's got a lot of goodness in that episode.
There is.
What's going on with this Moleman in bed with the wife and 2 kids?
Oh yeah, twice in 2 of the clips, somebody lies about her escaping his body and kills him. The first one, the mortician, and then these 3.
Yeah,
I've written either back to the mole men theory. These are 3 other mole people, or it's arguable that they're his brother and sister and niece rather than his children, because they don't look too much younger than him.
They look close enough to him, and he looks a bit younger in that thing. I don't know the context of that clip, but clearly there's mole people out there of different kinds.
Yes.
Shall we move on before we wrap it up? This is going to be super long, but I don't think you can have enough. I don't think you can be too gay for Moleman.
Exactly. He was always going to be a substantial one.
So Moleman art, rich pickings. I managed to cut it down to like 4, but look at this. Take a gander at this. Have you seen this one?
Yeah, I've seen this before. I've not seen it for a while. It's horrific, isn't it? Is it a 3D image or is it a model?
It's a real model kind of puppet. And if you go to this dude's website, so this is, hopefully you can see it on the screen. If not, if you're listening in audio, you'll have to go to the interwebs. It's from a website called easteffects.co.uk, and the person there who made it, there's loads of pictures of how they've cast each part of his body and built it up, and but it's really realistic and really creepy, and he looks a hell of a lot like a 100-year-old priest that both of us know, who's no longer with us, but so he's a 3D printed puppet using all these kind of mold techniques, but it is fantastic.
It's horrible. It's really good.
It's brilliant.
It's really good, but it's grotesque.
It's grotesque.
But it is sort of sweet as well. Like, looking at it again, like the face is sort of very Yoda-y as well.
He's very Yoda. Yeah, he looks like Henry Kissinger, the old
the war criminal.
War criminal Henry Kissinger. Maybe he doesn't
exactly.
Look like does he look like Dick Cheney? He looks like somebody.
Yeah, he does. It must have been hard as well to take a Simpsons character, like you said, with such a weird design and make it like that's one of the better where people draw like Simpsons as real people or whatever, or do things, and they always look kind of creepy and freaky. But this kind of is passable if it was slightly more skin colored rather than like it's a bit too yellow, but for obvious reasons. It looks like it could just be a model of a real person.
Oh, it's spot on. It's brilliant. Going to move on to a second one, which you may have heard before. This is a song by MC Lars, the Ballad of Hans Moleman. Now, I've done a cover version of this, which I'm going to send to you, because MC Lars' version is a kind of cheery hip hop song. It's not a ballad at all. But some of his lyrics are relatively funny. They refer to most of the stuff we've already talked about here. Hans Moleman is his name, aka Ralph Mellish. He's a stone cold player at his Ziff, was mad jealous when he dated Selma first, plus he's only 31. Got a knife in his cane and fire in his loins. The indie movie star who took a football to his groin. Burns thought he was a leprechaun, drilled him in the head, slept with Lars Ulrich's grandmother, then chilled in her bed. Yeah, it's pretty good. The lyrics are fun. He talks about getting attacked by Roomba robots, and part Droopy the dog and part Kenny McCormack comic. And he does reference Poochie in the chorus where he says, Moleman, Hans Moleman, you can't keep Hans Moleman down, because he's trying out for Poochie while he's waiting on his kidney. He's the talk of the whole damn town.
This looks great. I forgot, I kind of vaguely thought, did Hans Moleman, was he in that queue of people who auditioned to voice Poochie? And I kind of thought I was just being optimistic and I was wrong, so I didn't check. But seems like I was right, and there's another connection that Moleman could have been the voice of Poochie. And both of them are the voice of Dan Castellaneta anyway.
Exactly. So it wouldn't have been that hard for any of them. But basically, this Ballad of Hans Moleman is a self-belief anthem. And we don't know whether Moleman really believes in himself, or whether he's just dealing with the vast, unforgiving nature of the universe. But MC Lars likes to suggest that maybe if you've ever felt crushed by the weight of the planet, if you have, let me tell you that Hans Moleman understands it. You got to get up, put on your tie, lace up your orthopedic shoes, and look up at the sky and say, hey, solar ray, you won't burn me up. Keep that Moleman PMA. You can break out of that rut. Because when you're stuck in the snow and you're starting to turn purple, just remember Hans Moleman when the wolves start to circle. Good ending.
Yeah, that last line is fantastic. I also like the first line of that second verse. Have you seen his green pants? Have you seen his new shirt?
Is that a reference to something?
I don't think so. He does wear green pants.
He does indeed.
But I don't believe his shirt's new.
How about this one then? So this is another 3D model. You can buy this one on eBay for 700 quid. It's more realistic in some ways, but it's more characteristic. What's the word? What am I trying to say? Caricature in many.
Yeah, it looks like that. What's that British program that's like satirical? I hate them. Yeah, I hate it. It makes like there's something about it that makes me feel uncomfortable. Like the way they look freaks me out, and I'm not particularly bothered about puppets and stuff. So but specifically those things that are like disgust me in a way, and I'm getting that from this.
You're getting Cronenberg by it.
Yeah, I don't. I like it, but I don't. The first one, it's making the first one look a lot more like Kissing a Peanut.
Yeah, this one's not like Kissing a Peanut. It's a bit more freaky. I think it's pretty groovy. You get it for $400 US. That's 3.2 man. Just over 3 man yen, or 280 quid. And on this being the 21st century, if you want to see how Cosplay Chris made this, you can watch a video where he talks you through his process. It's pretty cool, pretty amazing. Well done.
Oh yeah, when I say I hate it, I mean that in the most complimentary way. Like it's
aesthetically, it's not. It's making you queasy, which I guess is part of maybe part of the thing.
I think that's the goal, really, isn't it? To make it look freaky and grotesque. So great job.
So here's one. I tried to stick to 3, but I couldn't. So here's one. I thought, one thing is you see that same picture of Moleman where he's basically, I think the one where he's pretending to be Bart and he's got the skateboard, right? And then people have taken that and made it into different things. I saw a Freddy Krueger one and so on. So I started looking for those, and I found this by an artist called Tristan Cruz, and he's done a full magazine that you can buy for $8 called Hans, and it's 16 pages long, and it's all pictures of Hans Moleman as different characters. Here you see him as the Turtles and as Wolverine. I've seen him as Freddy Krueger. I've seen him as pretty much every character, every famous character. Someone's had a go. So that's cool.
That is cool. I wouldn't say issue, but my thing with this is it's taking a standard image and adding. My issue is that it was like a pre-drawn Moleman. Like it was the most generic Mole. Like I can see the Moleman picture they've used underneath it.
So Robert Rauschenberg, I think it was Rauschenberg, the artist, who painted a bunch of white Stars and Stripes, and essentially talked about that being like a blank canvas. You would use something like the American flag, and you basically can do anything to it. So you basically find something that is anything, and that's how memes work, isn't it? This is basically a meme.
Yeah.
You find one standard image, and then you just do as many different things as you want to do to recontextualize it. So it is funny to have a Mormon Wolverine, and then maybe people will do a bunch of them, and the novelty will wear off, and then someone will do a really brilliant one, and you'll be like, oh, okay, I do get why having Mormon as Deadpool is really funny, and that works.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, I like these, and they're well done, and the shading, again, the shading is something I'm particularly bad at. I just wish they had a bit more of like the artists original, like they look like you could have got them from the show itself, which we kind of said about that database image, but that was a sort of a hand drawn, like you could still sort of see the artist charm in it, whereas this is sort of, yeah, like as standard as possible.
They haven't really, I mean, this is a standard trope, taking a picture of Mormon and making him into a different character. So I do get why there's that. So something just appeals to me to just taking a silly picture and mashing it with other things. The Poochie one where they mashed up Krampus, Poochie, and whatever dog from Disney was a good example of mashing stuff up and making it really different than the original.
And I would like to see all the other Mole Men from this book. Like, I'm intrigued, and the front cover is also very, very cool.
I wish that there's only 18 pages of Moleman mashups, which is good, but I thought, I would have liked 100 Moleman. I'm going to show the last one. I only put this in because I only found one image. Every single of the description gave me a different toy, and I'd like to see if you can describe this.
Wow, that's sort of cool. It looks similar to the last one in that I imagine there's a lot of these characters in that shape, maybe. Like Simpsons Lego, for example. This is one of the cooler, weirder ones, though. Like, he looks a bit like he's storing something in his cheeks. The tie continuity is something that's throwing me off here, because as far as I was aware, his tie is this colour that's in this image of this, like orangey colour. The figure of Mole Man has a grey tie, and that first image you showed me had a navy blue tie, which I picked up on. So he's a tie changer.
He's a tie.
I'll give him that.
It said it was a Lego figure, but I've got a feeling this is an original homemade one, because there is a Mormon Lego figure, but it's much more generic Lego-y. This is weird. Can you attempt to describe what's going on with his face and glasses?
He sort of has the same shaped face as E.T., but his glasses are dominating 60% of the face, which is true to character. The glasses themselves aren't attached to each other. He has like a lazy eye, like Maude did in that comic. Other than that, yeah, it's definitely hand-picked, because the head looks plastic, but the body looks hand-painted like clay. I don't know what's going on with the shape of the pants. His pants extend into his cane. Are those black lines supposed to be around the shoes?
Hard to say. I couldn't get any information on this, and the link took me to a website that no longer advertised it, and was a Spanish language site for like balloons and toys, like a moon pig. I really don't know anything about this. There's no other pictures of this particular mini Moleman on the internet, and it is bizarre.
I can't really see it, but does it say Widom Robot?
Widder Robot. It's hard to say. I looked for that as well. I looked for Willow Robot or Widder, and I couldn't find anything. So if this is you, if you made this, Traviston, you've made it this far into, if you made this figure and you've made it this far into the Hans Cast, please drop us a line at www.mordecastimpersonation.co.uk/Moleman's art.
Yeah. Exactly. Final thing to say about that is that his shirt seems to be untucked a la database.
I got that one. So, do you want to give us your best one? I'll flip back through them. You've got Little Moleman, Magazine Moleman, Resin Head Moleman, you got the Moleman Song, and you got original 3D Puppet Moleman.
It's a tie. If I was to purchase them, I would like to purchase the top one holding the Moleman keychain thing.
That can be arranged. Let's make it so, universe. All right, let's drive this bad boy home with
Yes.
little attention paid to the road, and let's see if we don't crash and burn. Time for a song. Who's going first?
Me, kissing a peanut.
Love Wife, Selma Bouvier, and Lunch Lady Doris holding hands.
Ralph Mellick,
Magnificent Bastard.
31 years old.
Wheelbarrow race with his father.
You wasted 5 minutes of my life and I want them back.
Oh, I'd just waste them anyway.
No one's gay for Moleman.
Seeing but Turner and kindly old gent.
Backflipping creep.
This should never appear on the show again.
One Death Maud.
DVD commentary.
Poochie.
Potato-looking man.
Kingdom of the Moles.
Driving a truck on K-Jazz.
Edgar Allan Poe.
Orange eating class.
Good Moleman to you.
Good moment to us all.
Best Moleman to you.
Killed by various molemen. It's just some gas escaping.
Orange tie.
88 and cannot swim.
Moe's sister.
Moe's cousin.
The end. Mole
Yeah.
end.
As you can already see, I've tried recording. New style opening with Kafka. So, I'll start, right? Are you ready? You got the lyrics?
Yeah. But in another sense, no.